The Lost Boys of Montauk by Amanda Fairbanks. It's a wonderful true story. Really resonated with me because I grew up in New York, and for those of you who know, Montauk is the town at the very farthest eastern point on Long Island, which is part of New York. And this book takes place in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and kind of like right up till these times today, the late 2020, 2021. Book really resonated with me because it's just so well written. A great journalistic style. Mrs. Fairbanks establishes herself with a lot of credibility with all of the people who were talked about in the book, and with her own skills as a journalist early on. And you really feel like you're in the hands of a writing pro throughout the whole story. This book resonated with me greatly because it just shows you this massive cross-section of society in New York. You've got people who are really wealthy, like the people who go to private schools and have apartments overlooking Central Park, and have country houses out in Long Island, in the Hamptons, really rich country club folk. And then you've got kind of the local folks of Montauk who make their living off of the local economy, which a big part of is based on fishing. And then you've got this kind of cross-section of both of those societies, plus the cross-section and the conflict between the two. It really gives you this flavor for people who are growing up in New York in those, like the 60s, 70s, 80s time frame. Very intimate inside story of their lives. I'm not going to tell you like the spoilers of this story, but there's just one of the characters is from a really wealthy family, and he leaves that whole life. He doesn't really want to be a part of it. He doesn't want to be at the country club, doesn't want to go to private schools. He wants to be a deep sea fishing boat charter captain is what he wants. He wants to surf, which is also another thing about living out on the very eastern point of Long Island. Good surfing out there. And then it really takes you inside of the country clubs and the homes of the wealthy. Then it takes you inside the homes and on the fishing boats of the people who work, the local people of Montauk. And it's this great kind of conflict that is just sort of playing out throughout the whole story. And the other thing is about it's the ocean. It's a very salty story. There's a lot of deep insights into the economy, both the home family economy of someone who works as a fisherman, and also kind of the whole sort of political and economic situation in New York around deep sea fishing. It gets into the boat ownership and a little bit of boat kind of architecture, nautical architecture. A lot of great information in there about the Coast Guard and shipwrecks and storms. And kind of the hidden past, it's just really, really salty story permeating throughout the entire book. Really recommend this one for anybody who would, thinks this sounds interesting to them. It was certainly interesting to me. And again, that whole kind of New York vibe, the rich and the poor and the locals, the clash and the conflict. And really interesting the way it kind of comes together too, where those two parts of society meet. Where do the fishermen and the surfers and the private school kids meet? It's this place called Montauk, out on the eastern tip of Long Island, and kind of what goes down there. And ultimately, the story is a tragedy. It's really a tragedy. It's the Lost Boys of Montauk. I have to do a shout out here for one of my fellows on Instagram. It's a profile on there called Pipes and Pages. And all they do is they post pictures of books, a picture of a book, and a pipe with tobacco. And it's all about pimping out great literature, usually a little bit more geared for literature that guys would enjoy. Like there's a lot of war stories and sea stories and, great sci-fi and fantasy stories. So I really like the Pipes and Pages account on Instagram. Definitely recommend following them. And that is where I first saw this book. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, boom, I'm going to read this. I know this is going to be a story that I love. So I recommend it. Amanda Fairbanks, The Lost Boys of Montauk. Don't forget to check out my podcast, Sea Stories and Science Fiction. It's available on all the podcast platforms. I've got over 30 salty stories on there. And right now I'm sourcing and recording episodes for season 2, where I'm going to have a whole fresh batch of sea stories that have more of like a crime and a sci-fi and a horror slant to them, plus some interviews and some original material on there. And lastly, I would call your attention just to a book that I wrote myself. The book I wrote is called The Pirate, and it's about a young guy who grows up in Los Angeles, and he gets mixed up with the law, and he ends up in the Coast Guard on the jailbird program. And he doesn't entirely get out of that life of crime, even though he's trying to be a good, stand-up, honest sailor in the Coast Guard. He's still kind of walking the line between, the good and the bad, the Coast Guard and the cartels. And he gets involved in a little bit of smuggling and a little bit of trouble. And it's a bit of a crime story. So it's a salty crime story by me. It's called The Pirate. It's available everywhere that you can buy paperbacks and eBooks. So give that a read if you like sea stories. Thank you. And I look forward to meeting up with you out there on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and all the other social networks.